Good afternoon, and welcome to another day of Issues in Focus with Shibiki Vivos. I am so privileged to be here. It's Monday, and for those of you who may not know, today's election day in Trinidad, and it's a calm and a peaceful environment right now. It's raining a bit, but I mean, we're enjoying it. And today, even as we explore today's topic for those individuals who will be viewing as usual, I will be praying for you, for the audience, just before we get into the program. And as usual, I want to encourage you also to share this broadcast to anyone so that it may be a blessing to them also. So let us pray. Great God and eternal Father, which art in heaven, we take time out to say thank you this afternoon. I pray for the audience in a special way, each and every individual that will be viewing this broadcast. May you help that it will help to give them some form of transformation. We can use the broadcast to touch the lives and the hearts of others. Have your way, we pray, through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Great. So, as usual, I'm always excited because I mean, every time you're here to sit and to address an issue. And today I have two gentlemen with me, and I'm going to ask them to briefly introduce themselves to us this afternoon here. And so they can begin in any random order. Remember, audience, for you, those of you who are viewing on YouTube, or you may be viewing on Facebook, I would not know if you're viewing unless you place a comment in the comment section. And just to let you know, I'm streaming on my page, Shibiki Vival. So even if you make comments here, I will get to see them, and I'm streaming on Issues in Focus also. So, gentlemen, all of you.
Okay, I'll go first. I am Will Campbell. I am a psychologist and a lecturer in psychology at the University of Guyana. And I'm looking forward to interacting with you all. Thank you very much, Shibiki, for having me on this program.
Most welcome. I look forward for this event a while ago because I needed Elder Will to be here, but I'm so happy that finally I got him to be here today. Ashiba, good afternoon to you. So welcome. And then we move over.
A pleasant good afternoon to each and every one of you. Certainly it is a privilege to be here. I feel humble because I'm in the presence of two brilliant minds. And so I'm really here probably as a pastor to share a pastoral point of view on things. I'm currently a pastor with the Assembly Adventist Church. I serve in Trinidad under the South Caribbean Conference. For those of you who are familiar with Trinidad, I pastor the Chaguanas District, and it certainly is a pleasure for me to be here with you.
All right, great. So thank you very much, Pastor Hines and Elder Will Campbell. Thank you for being here. So my viewers, please don't forget to share this broadcast because somebody on your page right now may need help in this particular issue. So we're dealing with managing the anger within. So I'm going to get straight into the questions. Audience, you can ask your questions. Don't forget, you can post your comments. Andre, Dr. Hader, I'm so happy that you're here. You said you're front seat today. Excellent. Yes, you're the second person to make a comment today, and that's very nice. All right, so I'm going to go to my first question. And so what I want to know is when we look at managing the anger within, what I want to know is why is it that sometimes people, anger will usually catch people by surprise. That's the first question I want to know. Why is it that many persons they get caught by surprise as it relates to the issue of anger?
All right. I like to address this question by speaking about what we call in psychology the cognitive triangle. Now, pretty much everything we do starts with a thought, and so based on how we think, based on how we process a particular input, that would influence how we feel about it. And so thoughts lead to emotions, and then those emotions will kind of determine how we respond or how we behave or how we act. Now that loop from thought to feeling to action, it happens really quickly, split second really. And so very often something is said, something is done, we receive a piece of information, some kind of stimulus, and without seeming to think, but we have processed it. Almost instinctively, it evokes a certain feeling, a certain emotion, and we act on that emotion. And this loop happens so quickly sometimes that we don't even realize that that is what is happening. All right. So, for example, if somebody, Ms. Vivos, you would know that in Guyana, we don't make mother jokes. So if somebody comes and they say something about my mother, in fact, in Guyana, you don't even have to say anything about the person's mother. You just have to say to them, your mother. And immediately, based on how we process that, because we see it as extremely disrespectful, that's how we think about it. And because that's how we think about it, we feel disrespected, we feel angry immediately. And, if you're not lucky, you're likely to get punched in the mouth, and that happens real quick. So it's your mother, bam. That cognitive triangle has been executed, but it has happened so quickly that it's like a surprise. And sometimes the angry person, after everything is finished, that's when you consciously process it and you say, but I didn't even listen to hear what he was saying about my mother. I didn't even, and now the person teeth on the floor, and you could get into trouble. So it happens really quickly, and I think the trick to this, though, is to slow down that process or prepare for it, and then it's not likely to catch you by surprise.
Thank you so much, psychologist. Pastor Hines?
And yeah, I really like the way that it was explained by Elder Campbell. Even Christ himself, he understands that in life we'll get angry. He understands that it is a natural reaction to a perceived threat. And so he even said in Ephesians 4:26, be angry and sin not. So in other words, what he is really saying is that you will get angry through different experiences, but how you deal with it is important. And so that is why when we face perceived threats, when we are faced with something that really stirs us up, I always share with my members that we must be proactive rather than reactive. Because when we are reactive, we will do things that we don't think through. And as a result, there are many persons who are living lives of regret because they were reactive. So we must always remember that we are human. No matter who you are, how spiritual you are still a human. And the reality is, as you go through this life, there will be things that would cause you to get angry. Even the very best of persons in the Bible got angry. And I guess as we go on, we'll talk more about that. But again, knowing that that is going to happen allows you now to prepare yourself for when it happens, so that you don't just make hasty judgments and hasty decisions.
Thank you so much, Pastor Hines. And what we want as we go ahead in this conversation, if any one of you have anything to add, even after the person finished speaking, as we continue the flow. And I want to say welcome to Ifel and Danielle. Welcome to both of you today. And so I want to know, are there any warning signs by chance that sometimes are being exhibited? I know we spoke about it being caught by surprise, but in terms of persons who are usually angry, do they showcase warning signs? Can I just look at somebody and know that they're angry? And even while the panelists ponder on that question, I want to say to the audience, I'm going to place the link in the chat section, and feel free if you want to come in to give a point. I know Dr. Hidar, you always here to give us the scientific aspect of it. So feel free if you want to join the chat just to comment. No problem. We'll appreciate that very much. Yes, gentlemen. So we did warning signs.
Okay, so it is easier to tell when someone else is angry than it is to tell that you are getting angry. Because like I tried to explain a little earlier, the response is it is fast. But let me back up to what Pastor Hines said a little earlier, though, that it is important that we learn to be proactive than to be reactive, and as one person put it, we should respond rather than react. So our response is a choice. You have chosen how you are going um, to respond to this situation. Reactions tend to be a lot more instinctive, and it is easier to be responsive when you are proactive. So that if you plan, I mean, we know we will get angry, and I'm hoping we get a chance to talk about planning for anger a little bit later on. So it is a little more. Sometimes though, we could feel ourselves getting angry. Sometimes we can feel ourselves getting angry because of the circumstance we're dealing with, and some people feel themselves getting hot behind the neck. That's blood rushing up to the brain. Sometimes we feel our muscles getting tense. But other people are more likely to see these things because it appears, like you said, to creep up on us. Some people you can see that the jaw muscle clenching and unclenching, our fists tighten, our faces. There's a muscle that brings our eyebrows together. Those things happen. So it's easier to observe those things in another person than it is to this could be happening with you and you're not even noticing. And someone might say to you, "But why are you getting so worked up?" And very often our response is, "I'm not worked up. Me and Vex." You know, but like I said, it's easier to observe this thing happening in other people. However, if we are mindful, and as a Christian, I have to be careful about how I talk about mindfulness. But if we are mindful and we pay attention to our bodies and we pay attention to our own responses, you can tell that, you know what, I'm beginning to get angry. And there's some other things that happen, like like in most emotionally charged situations, the pitch of our voice goes up, the the speed at which we talk increases. So there's some things that are outwardly observable, even though while there are lots of things happening internally as well. All right, so there are some things that you can notice about yourself, but very often, if you are not mindful, it will slip right past your attention and you don't even realize that this is what is happening.
And I think the reality is that it happens so quickly, and that's why it's so difficult to recognize it in yourself, whereas you will quicker see it in someone else, as my brother Elder Campbell would have shared, because of the rapid succession at with which things happen. Now, the reality is, I believe, as you grow in life and as you become more experienced, you are better able to pick up those things when they are happening. But at the same time, you must be willing to recognize that, hey, at points in life, I will get angry. And so when you are conscious of things like these, you can recognize them when they are happening. Like, for example, I remember years ago while I was in high school. I mean, in high school, the reality is there's always somebody who's throwing around some talk or trying to cause a fight or what have you. And I mean, even at that young age, I would recognize that there is something inside me that would be boiling, and it would tell me that I'm getting angry.
Yes.
For me, I'm the kind of person when I'm angry. You see, mostly talk about up here. It shows, all right. And so for me, I mean, when I was younger, I dealt with it differently because I was quick to speak and slow to listen. But as I matured through life, I got to understand that, hey, this is a challenge I have as a person, and I have to deal with it. So that now, when things happen, when I'm dealing with some of my church members, when I'm dealing with individuals, and they're doing things that are really going contrary to how I believe things should go, that would cause me angry. And one of the things that really gets me angry as a person is when I see oppression. I hate to see people oppressing others. Something inside me would be boiling. It would bother me. But then now, because I have gone through the process and the years of maturing through these situations, I can be able to recognize it. I'm still not where I would like to be, but I can be able to recognize it so that I am better able to deal with it and manage it when it happens.
Thank you. And as Daniel made this comment here, when he said some people just don't have a filter between their brain and their mouth, right? And
I'd like to respond to that if I may. But we're not
yeah,
born
sure.
with that. We're not born with that filter. It is something that we have to cultivate. It is something that we have to deliberately work on because we are not born with that filter.
I love that. Thank you. So I'm feeling nice right now with your response there. So I can be angry, And Pastor Heinz. So when I vex, don't give vex that I vex. All right. So and then there is this thing that persons often communicate, and people want to know. I wonder, is anger a secondary emotion? Is it a primary emotion? What do you say? So we want to know today if it's a secondary emotion, why or why not?
Most times, I believe that there are underlying factors that causes you to get angry, and that's why I would say anger it comes across to me, in my understanding, or another psychologist, as a secondary emotion because there is something that happens that causes you to get angry. Like for example, if I should be biblical for a bit, when Jesus was dealing with those money changers in the temple who are oppressing the poor. Now we know the experience. It just appears as if Jesus got angry and he dealt with it. But Jesus hated to see oppression. He didn't like seeing people taken advantage of. And so that was there. So when he recognized it, the next thing that happened was him getting angry. Similarly, with my experience, if I see somebody beating on another individual or taking advantage of that individual, something within me doesn't like me seeing that. And so as a result of that, that would trigger, and then I would get angry. Now, in other situations, for example, someone grows up in an environment where they are hurt and there's a level of hurt that they are carrying, that hurt now would trigger off their anger. So when they're in situations where hurt is experienced, the next thing that comes is that. And it goes through. So I would say yes, maybe a psychologist could share a little more information, but I would say it is a secondary emotion because there's always something that triggers it off.
Thank you. And even before Elder Campbell comments here, many times I like to say, we never know the root problem of somebody, right? Of why they're behaving, how they're behaving. And that is why it's imperative for us to look at the underlying factor, as you would have alluded to. Of course, the psychologist would be able to address it on the psychological aspect. And even to our viewing audience. Samuel, hi, viewing from YouTube. Welcome. I'm so happy to see you here this afternoon. And for those of you who may not know Samuel, Samuel was one of our child panelists we had the other day, who was from, well, of course, he's from Guyana, Quarantine. And I'm so happy that he's actually sitting in, listen to Big People program today. And Samuel, boy, I know this, many of your friends too, your school friends, maybe they'll have anger issues. So don't be afraid, share the YouTube link to them so that they can tune into the program that we have today. So psychologist Will, what do you have to say about this anger being, whether it be a secondary emotion or not?
Anger is, at its very base, a primary emotion, but very often it is expressed as a result of a different emotion. So in that case, it would be secondary. A lot of the times when we think we're actually experiencing a lot of the times when we think we're angry, we're actually experiencing a different emotion. What happens is that sometimes life teaches us to hide certain emotions, to keep certain emotions, to suppress certain emotions. For example, very often we're taught that people mustn't know that you're hurt, or people mustn't know that you're sad, people mustn't know that you're embarrassed. But nobody tells us that people mustn't know that you're angry. And so what happens is, because emotions, by their very definition, were meant to be expressed, it is important that we express emotions. We learn over time socially that anger is a safe emotion. So if I'm jealous, I express it as anger, because if I express jealousy, I will get some condemnation. In fact, particularly men are taught that anger is sexy and that other emotions are effeminate. So I can't go to my buddies, on the side of the street and say, I feel really sad today. I can't say that to my friends. They what's wrong with you? They will take away my man card. So instead, what I learned to do over time is I somehow translate that sadness into anger. So I'm feeling sad, but I respond in ways that are angry, in ways that demonstrate anger. The same thing happens with disappointment. The same thing happens when I feel embarrassed. The same thing happens with a lot of emotions that I feel that socially I have learned are not safe to express. But I've learned over time that it's safe to express anger. Let me prolong this a little bit. As a little, all of us have had this experience. A little girl falls down. She's 3 or 4. She falls down. She looks back. She starts to cry. Everybody gets up, rushes, tries to pick her up, dusts her off, shakes her and holds her and comforts her until she stops crying. A little boy falls down. Same age, same circumstance. What do we say to him? We tell him, get up, boys, don't cry. Come on now, get up and run again. And so what that boy has learned is that it is not safe for him to express hurt or embarrassment or pain. But when he gets angry, it's almost like he's cheered on, because we see anger as a demonstration of masculinity. And this is particularly, it happens for women too, because there are some women who would say, I'm not crying, I'm too strong for that. But they're hurting. And they express anger, and that is seen as a strength. And so we learn that expressing anger is strength, and expressing these other things is a sign of weakness. And so whenever we go through these other emotions that need expression, we express it through anger. And so in that way, anger is secondary.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Pastor Hines.
Oh no, I just wanted to add to it because well, not really to add, not that what he said wasn't enough, but just to expand a bit more. The reality is, because I know as a psychologist, you would be dealing with much more cases than I deal with. But even as a pastor, dealing with members and dealing with situations, there's always something internal that will cause external behavior. And I think it's important to recognize that these internal things, because you see, if you don't deal with those internal things, like as was expressed, hurt, frustration, depression, shame, guilt, those type of things, even grief, if you don't deal with that, it comes out in the form of anger when you are faced with different situations. And so what happens a lot of the times is that it's not that you want to express it that way, but because there is something on the inside that is boiling up, something that you are choosing not to address, you come out and you display certain types of behavior. And most of the times, the individuals who are affected with that type of behavior are the ones who are close to you. So that's why you see, especially with the rise of COVID and this pandemic, there's more domestic disputes. There's more abuse happening in homes. Children are afraid of their parents because they are verbally assaulted. And all these situations, because there is something internal that is not addressed, and the anger now comes out external, and it happens to the ones close. And if somebody trips us off at the wrong time, then they get a share of it as well.
Thank you. And I just want to say good afternoon to Nurse Hines. Hi, Toya, Victoria's Batson, welcome. And Champion viewing from Facebook, welcome to you. So what I know you guys mentioned in terms of men in our society. I mean, what would your appeal be to our men, both of you? I mean, it was funny enough, when I sent out an invitation letter for persons to select topic, there was only one young woman that actually selected this topic, right? Well, she couldn't be here today due to work. But when I look at it, I'm like, okay, why is it like it's a men's world when it comes to anger management and everything? So what I want to know, what would you appeal to our men folk who, because of societal, well, whether it be traditions or custom or social grooming, that teaches men not to be, well, expressive of their hearts and hence escalates to anger? What will our appeal be to them?
What I can say is that men needs to understand that they have feelings, that they go through different hurts and pains, and that we need to talk about it. Because the reality is we are cultured, as was shared by our psychologists present, we are cultured to think that the moment we share our feelings, we're effeminate. We are cultured to think that only women are supposed to express feelings, only women are supposed to talk about their problems. And even as a pastor, most of the times, the only time I really see men coming in is when the situation has escalated. They don't want to come to counseling. They don't want to deal with because they're afraid to get inside because they think if they do that, they're effeminate or it's not a man's job to do those things, to talk about his feelings. So what I would say is that we need to be in tune with our internal feelings and emotions. We need to have a safe space to talk. Don't it's good to have friends, but at the same time, it's better to have friends who can build you up. All right. And so if I have friends, I must have friends who I'm able to have conversations with. All right. And I must be able to talk. And I think it's important to create that safe space where you can share. And when you have that type of environment, you are able to talk without being judged. So now you can know, okay, someone else is going through what I'm going through as well. Someone else is, and now we can encourage each other. The Bible tells us, the wise King Solomon said, as iron sharpeneth iron, so does a man sharpen the countenance of his friends. And so there is a strength that comes about with that. But we must have a group in which we can talk without the fear of being judged or being looked down upon. And I know growing up, well, thankfully for me, I grew up in a home that was a single parent home managed by my mother. And so because of that, I learned that it's okay to talk. And I think that has really helped me. But then as I went through high school, I was dealing with fitting in. It was a secular high school as well, dealing with fitting in. And I would just stifle my emotions. Now, it got a bit challenging during that point in time because my father was not actively present in my life. And so I thought that there are some things during that period because of the environment I was in as well. I used to do that. And then I got into university and I realized that there was some hurt that I was carrying because I was not talking about these things. And I'll tell you, probably in another broadcast when we're dealing with depression, I'll tell you that it really led me to a process of depression. But the moment I learned to talk about my feelings again, man, I've been enjoying life so much more. But again, talk with people who can build you up, who you can trust, that safe space. And there must be at least one person you can relate to share that with. And I always share with my members, if there's nobody, then at least there's your pastor. At least you can talk. And I've seen, even as I counsel with individuals, you see men, when men talk about things, I can see tears coming out of their eyes. I can see the level of growth to know that I was holding in something that I didn't have to hold in. I was carrying something that I should not have carried because I am able to talk about things.
Thank you. That's a mouthful, Pastor Hines. Thank you for that. Psychologist Campbell.
Pastor Hines has dealt with that very, very well, you know. We have we have to stop subscribing to the fallacy that women are more emotional than men. It is not true. Now, it might be true that we express our emotions differently, but we feel exactly the same things that women feel. And so we have this thing in our heads that we're not supposed to be emotional as men. We're taught that really. We're taught that really, and we have to move away from that place. And so we're afraid to express these emotions. But we have to learn as men that, you know, in fact, one of the things that is said is that a man you must get in touch with your feminine side. A man does not have a feminine side. That it is your masculine side. And that emotional side of a man is also your masculine side. And there is nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with it. Now, like I said earlier, you may express those emotions differently, but you do experience those emotions. And so we have to learn to acknowledge those emotions. And I want to endorse what Pastor Hines so eloquently said, that we as men need to create safe space where other men can express their emotions. Women do it all the time, you know, and that's why there are not so many women in jail for domestic violence. Women do it all the time. You all sit down and you talk and everybody cries together and nobody judges anybody for crying, but with us men, You know, as soon as somebody starts to tear up a little bit, the rest of us get really uncomfortable. And so we make that person feel bad for their weakness. We have to create safe emotional spaces where, as men, we can commiserate and we can support each other emotionally and express those things that are hurting us inside. And Pastor Hank said something a little earlier where he referred to unresolved trauma and unresolved issues being a source of chronic anger. And if we are able to, like he was able to do, if we're able to find a space where we can express those things, you know, a lot of our unresolved trauma, all we need is a space to talk about it. In a lot of cases, that's all we need, a space to talk about it where we will not be judged and where our feeling will be validated. And very often when you do that, you feel like a lump has come out of your throat, and you're able to face the world in the absence of all those obstacles, those things that were holding you back all the time. So we have to acknowledge, first of all, that we are emotional beings, and we have to find safe spaces where we can express these emotions.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you. And I just want to say welcome to Julius Paul, who's viewing, Deborah. Hi, Sister Collins. Deborah McKinnon, viewing on YouTube. And I just want to put this comment here from Champion. It's parents, siblings, and society needs to aid in the process. Many times we are the ones who make men feel the way they do. Yeah. And then Julius asked this question here, our first question from the audience, member of the audience. Julius asked, what if they are not aware of the internal issues that are resulting in their behavior? What do you guys think about that question there?
Elder Campbell has been, is he there? I prefer to hear a psychological part before I share my, okay, I think he's knocked off. Now so I'm forced to speak, right? Now the reality is, yes, there are individuals who are not aware of some of these issues that are happening, and that is why you would hear persons oftentimes saying, but I didn't do anything wrong.
True.
And so even in marital relationships, they don't think that there is a problem. Even in relationships, persons don't think that they are contributing to the demise of the relationship because they don't see anything wrong. So yes, there are some individuals who would not be aware of those things that are resulting in their behavior. But I really think that that is where there needs to be, for example, there needs to be a honest conversation from someone who cares for them. And the reality is sometimes they might not want to recognize what they are doing. And that is where you pray for that individual. Because the reality is, and I'd like to hear a psychological point of view on it, but the reality is the only person I can change is the person I see in the mirror. That's the only person I can change. And to add to it, I can't do it on myself. I need God's grace to do it as well. All right. And so it's not wise to try to change somebody if that's their behavior. I would say keep having conversation with them, trying to show them and pray for them so that you can assist them along that journey. I'd like to hear what Elder Campbell would have to say on this.
All right. So while he prepares, I just want to say welcome to, I miss Mr. Weldon joining us. Good afternoon. Ms. Williams from Grenada and Fran Reynolds. Welcome to all of you. Sister Adele Mark, welcome. Sister Carol, welcome. And Snowbite too, welcome to you also. So Elder Campbell just getting himself organized, so he will answer his question in a few. We also have another question on the table as soon as you guys are finished. Oh my.
Okay, I think I'm back. I hope I found a more stable connection.
Okay.
I'm not sure what I missed, but I'm responding to the question that is here. What if we're not aware of those internal issues that are resulting in our behavior? Right. So even if we are not aware of the internal issues, the underlying issues, our issue would be anger. So if you notice that you are easily angered and that your responses are out of control and destructive, then you know that there is an issue. And you might not be aware of what that issue is, because for a lot of us, dysfunction has become normal. So we don't recognize that we grew up in a terrible situation, or this thing that happened to us was harmful. For some of us, because of how we grew up, those things were normal, and we dismiss them as some things that should be pushed to the back of your head, and you should get over it. A lot of those things we don't get over, and we don't realize it. But you know now that you're in a situation where maybe you can't keep a job, or you're not getting along very well with people because you get angry so quickly. Then you know that you need, and you're unable to change that situation. Then it becomes clear that you need some help, and you need to talk to someone who can help you identify what those underlying issues are, so that you can resolve them and move forward.
Thank you very much, Sister Eva Price. Welcome. And I just want to encourage our audience at this point in time, for all of you viewing, if you have not shared this broadcast to your page, it means that you're doing injustice to somebody else who may need help in this particular manner. I mean, I've been wrong at workplaces, at school, and I know there's several persons suffering from this issue here. And for those of you who are viewing on YouTube also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And for all of our viewers, you can please feel free to subscribe. Some people don't like Facebook, and they were so happy when I started YouTube channel. So please subscribe, so as soon as the program is on, you will get your notification that a program is on at the moment.
All right. Just before you continue, if I may just say something. No, the reality is, if I constantly realize that my actions are causing some sort of demise, then I really need to take stock of my life and recognize that something is wrong. Now, there are some individuals who subscribe to the idea that nothing is wrong with me, that I'm good just the way I am. And those are the hardest individuals to work with, because they don't recognize that something happened, something is wrong. The reality is, we must, and backtracking to a biblical perspective, we must always recognize that we are sinful, that we are broken. All of us are broken. Even the very best of us, we are broken.
Yeah.
And we are broken, and we are in need of help. And if I have that perspective that something is wrong with me because of sin, and unless I seek out, I would always be rotating in circles. If I have that idea, then fine, I can be worked with. And so I think persons need to really appreciate the fact that it's okay to be broken. Because there are many individuals who don't like to address issues because I am weak if I talk about something. If I go to a counselor and I share with him that I get angry, I may appear to be weak. If I share that I have a problem with a certain temptation, and that's the reality. But as I share with individuals, I respect somebody more who comes to me and share with me, I am in need of help. Because it shows that you are recognizing that something is going on, and so to the individuals who are listening, maybe you cannot recognize that. First, I want you to understand that we are all broken, in need of help. But the beauty is that God has not left us broken. God has provided a way out. And if we seek Him, if we seek help through godly persons, through persons who are professionally trained, then we can be able to get the growth that is necessary. But we must first recognize that we are broken individuals living in a broken world.
Thank you.
And tangential to that, if I may jump in here, is the reality that for a lot of us, anger has become a wall of defense. True. And so we are afraid to come out from behind that wall, and we feel naked without our anger. And that usually happens when we spend so much time in situations of abuse that we feel like the only way to deal with that is to lash out. And so we feel like, I've heard people say, for example, I was asked to do some anger management work with the police force, for example, with some sections of the police force. And one of the senior officers said to me, "Listen, I don't want you going in there and softening my men, because there was a feeling that you're soft if you without your anger." So that's probably one of the reasons that many of us don't see anger as a problem. We see it as a solution, really. So it adds to the complexity of the whole thing sometimes.
Yeah. And that's deep food for thought. Yeah. And but Snowbite too is asking another question here. You mentioned Elder Campbell that you feel yourself becoming angry. How do you control that anger when the trigger is constantly present? Excellent question. And I think this is where a lot of people want to know how do I control when the trigger is constantly present? Thank you for that question.
All right.
All right.
So the short answer to that. Oh boy.
Yes, you're on.
I think he's having some technical challenges there.
Elder Campbell, you back?
All right. Yes, I am, I hope. The short answer to that is, if you can't remove yourself physically from the situation, because one anger management tip we usually give people is to walk away. Remove yourself physically from the situation. But if you can't remove yourself physically, then you need to remove yourself emotionally. And I'm going to try to explain that as briefly as I can. I once had a supervisor who used to irritate me to the point where I could feel the adrenaline pumping into my bloodstream. It's like I could feel these hormones leaving where they are produced and coming into my bloodstream. It was, and I could not avoid dealing with that supervisor. I mean, I can't walk away from my supervisor. I need my job. So what I learned to do was to remove myself emotionally so that she could say what she needed to say. She could do what she needed to do, but it did not move me. And I did that sometimes by kind of taking my mind to a different place. Like there was I had some plans for my future, and I knew that God had sanctioned those plans for my future. And so while she was saying things that would normally trigger my anger, I would take myself to that place where God would put me in the future, if you know what I mean. So I have a picture of that in my mind. And I remember once, the picture was so beautiful that it made me smile. And I came back to reality when I heard her saying, I'm talking to you about something serious and you're here smiling. So what I had to learn to do then was take myself away emotionally and get my mind to focus on something that was more pleasant. And that way I was able to deal with the anger trigger without allowing it to trigger me.
Okay.
And I like. Thank you for sharing that, Elder, because it's really important for us to identify our stressor and learn to deal or to manage that. And I'm thankful that for you got that, and for others, there may be different aspects different ways they can relate to it. Now, added to that, we must also understand that we are in a spiritual battle. That's the truth. Bible tells us in Ephesians 6:12 that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And so the enemy knows what triggers us. And so every day he would come with some temptation at us. So that's the psychological part, but also, as I indicated earlier, we are spiritual beings. And we are in a spiritual warfare. And that is why it's so important for us to connect with God so that he can give us the strength to help deal with these things. Because some of the things that are shared on our own, if we try to do them, we could end up in problems. Because we get frustrated when we see that it's not changing. I like the way that Jesus said it in Luke 22, verse 32. He says, Simon, the devil desired to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith fail not, and when you are converted, strengthen your brethren. And I like that because it allows me to know that just as the devil desired to take out what was harsh and what was messed up from Peter, because the sifting process, for those of us who know sifting wheat, the sifting process is to take out the pebbles and what have you. And so Satan wanted to show him up. But Jesus said, I have prayed for you that your faith fail not. So that we are going to be placed into experiences where we have a weakness. For example, my weakness may be, and I'm just using this, not saying it is, but my weakness may be my mouth. And I love to speak without thinking things through. And the enemy knows that. So he's going to put me in situations where people say things to me to get me angry. And I may want to speak without thinking, getting angry. And as a result, there might be regrets. Now, God is saying the enemy is going to come like at you like that. But then Jesus is saying he's prayed for you. And when we connect to him, we are able to tap into a power that can give us the strength so that when the enemy comes at us, and he may use our co-workers, he may use our family members, he may use people who were driving and somebody gives us a bad drive, he would use different situations. And so when we're connected to God, we can find the strength to deal with that. So it's important to recognize the psychological part. I'm not denying that in any way. But it's also important to recognize that we have a spiritual aspect, and unless we connect to God, we cannot fully deal with these situations when they come up at us.
Yeah, well said. And welcome, Tanet. You're viewing on YouTube. Welcome to you. And but I just want to zero in there. I recognize there are two comments that came in. Hi, John. Welcome to you too. There are two comments that came in as it relates to we would have been speaking about talking and for us going and talk to people. But then Sister Deborah first said this, but Pastor, some people that you confided are not confidential, right? And then Sister Price would have said this also. I understand what you're saying, but it's very difficult for some people to get help, because when you go to those persons for help, instead of helping you, them talk about your problems. So psychologists and pastor, we help people to understand that yes, we need to talk, but then at the same time, how do they bridge the gap between confidential persons trying to work out their stressors and at the same time getting their stressors or their problems out there?
Right, and that is why I shared earlier we need to find safe space. There are some individuals who just love to gossip. You tell them something, the entire village is going to know that. Don't go talking to that person about your problem. And that's why I'm saying we need to find safe space. If you belong to a church, your pastor should be a safe space. Because I know many of us, we cannot afford professional help. Professional help would be ideal as well. But I know many of us...
Pastor Hines, you made a point, should. I love the use of that word, should.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hoping and we're praying that pastors are confidential.
Should. Right.
Just touch it, just putting that out there.
Yes. Your pastor should be confidential, that's the truth. I always share with my members, when you share something with me, the only time you'll ever hear me talk about it is if you give me permission to share that. Whatever you share with me stays between us. And so if you belong to a church, your pastor should be that person to assist you. I know, as I said, some persons cannot afford professional help, so we have that medium that we go to. Now, the reality is all of us should at least have one person that we can trust. I'm thinking that we all should have one person that we can trust, that we could relate to, so that we can have a conversation with them. Because you see, what happens many times is when we and this is reality. Let me say this before. I know for many individuals, you would have shared out of confidentiality to someone and you heard your business somewhere else. And that you put up a wall now, as Ella Campbell would have highlighted, you put up a defense mechanism. So you don't want to, but remember, yes, in life you would have bad experiences, but don't allow one bad experience or two bad experiences to just shut you off completely. All right? And so don't just go outrightly and share your business with someone, but develop that trust relationship with them. And I think sometimes we get ourselves in trouble because we meet someone and we start to share our business with them. We need to be careful with that as well. But as you develop that trust relationship with an individual, whether it be a friend, whether it be a church member, whether it be your pastor, an elder who you can trust, then yeah, and so move forward. But if you've had a bad experience, don't allow that to just cut you off completely, because God created us to be social beings and we need to function in community.
Well said. Elder Campbell, I see you giving us the psychologist not there. All right, good.
Oh, I don't know that I could add anything to that. That was I don't have anything to add. That was well said.
All right, great. And there is another notion that we have. Well, I shouldn't use the word notion, but there is something that we call healthy anger and I guess unhealthy anger. So the question is, when is healthy anger good, or when is it utilized, and when can that become unhealthy or harmful to us?
All right. I hope that my internet doesn't fail me here. Anger in itself is neither bad nor good. In and of itself is neither bad nor good. It's just a natural human response. It is our how we respond to it, how we react to that anger, what comes out of that anger, that is bad or good. However, no, I'm hoping that the theologian here would correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we were created in the image of God, and I believe that image is not just a physical image, but it's also emotional, and God gets angry too, right? So we get angry too. It's part of that image that we've inherited from our Creator Father. And so how we respond is what makes all the difference. However, anger can become chronic, and then it becomes destructive. When you're chronically angry,
Oh my.
There goes the internet again.
Let me see if I can help to pick up where he was going. Now, there could be positive aspects of anger, and there could be negative aspects of anger as well. And as you rightly shared, even God himself gets angry. You're probably thinking Pastor is saying something unbiblical, right? But no, the Bible does give us the experience where Jesus was angry at the money changers. That's the example I used earlier. And there are other examples in the Bible, and that's one of the things I like about the Bible, is that the Bible doesn't hide. The Bible shows the good, the bad, and the ugly, as I like to say. And so there are individuals in the Bible who got angry, but their names are still in the Bible. As a matter of fact, you go to Hebrew, and their name is still there. Moses was angry, but Moses' name is in the Hall of Fame in Hebrews. And so the reality, as I shared with you, is, as Elder Campbell was sharing, we will get angry. God understands that, and that is why he says to us in Ephesians 4:26, "Be angry and sin not." Now, well, one of my favorite authors is Ellen G. White, and she says this about the experience with Jesus when he was in the temple with the money changer. Steps to Christ, the first chapter. She said, with tears in his eyes, Christ did what he did. So it wasn't a type of anger that was looking to be destructive. It was what can be termed as righteous indignation. And good anger is when you are able to properly communicate your feelings, properly communicate your thoughts, and you can take charge of the situation. That's good anger. And as I shared earlier, the Bible says in Ephesians 4:26, "Be angry and sin not." So God understands that as we go through this life, we will get angry. Not might or may. We will get angry. But then he says, "Be angry and sin not." Because he knows that it is possible with his power to not give in to the destructive parts that anger would bring. How we deal with it, how we manage it is important. So let me let Elder Campbell pick up where he was going back again.
Lord Jesus, could you please be with Elder Campbell's internet? I remember last week, before last session, last Friday, before I went live with the girls, we had a whole lot of internet issues behind the scenes before we went live. And I'm like, Lord, listen, we need to get this rectified. And it so happened as soon as we went live, that was the problem. So Lord, could you please intervene this afternoon? Elder psychologist, go right ahead. I think you're on back.
Okay, so I was saying that so if chronic anger is unhealthy, so if you're angry all the time, so that your anger is just always just below the surface, waiting to boil over, then it is unhealthy. And that usually comes when you are not able to express all of the negative emotions, all of the hurts, all the pains, and so on. So in that case, anger is unhealthy. If you have not learned, because we have to learn how to deal with our anger, if you have not learned how to respond to anger in ways that are healthy and constructive, then it's unhealthy then again. But again, it is a function of our ability to respond to it, not the anger in and of itself, but our ability to respond to it. That is essentially the problem. And so we have to learn to respond to anger in ways that are healthy, and we have to learn to manage our emotions so that they don't we don't have that pressure cooker effect where all of that hurt is stored up and it's anger just below the surface, just waiting for an excuse, the slightest excuse to boil over. So in those circumstances, I believe it is unhealthy.
Okay. And I want to know in terms of, okay, we dealt with triggers and everything. What if there be a situation whereby you know for a fact that someone has it out for you, right? And it's like no matter how much you try to deal with it emotionally, no matter how you try to be out of the person's side physically, it's like you're trying every single thing, but yet still all of what you are trying, it is failing. How can still try to manage that anger when they were trying to deal with it, they were trying to manage it all the time, but every time, constantly, person or the situation just keeps coming in their path.
Um, Again, I just have to be biblical, right? Because I'm a pastor.
Yeah, it will go, Pastor.
The reality is that there are going to be some things in this life is that we're going to be trying on our own. But as I said, it's a spiritual battle. And that is why each and every day we must cultivate a relationship with God. Because whether we recognize it or not, without God, we are going to live miserable lives. And that's what I said earlier. Situations would happen. Sometimes it happens to me. I have my devotion that morning. I'm going through the day. Somebody decides to do something that just gets me upset. But then because I connected with God, I get the strength to face it. And that's why I like how Paul says it in Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ. Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ. In other words, I have died with him. All right, now it's not literally, it's a symbolical thing, yet I live. And it's no longer I who lives, but Christ who liveth in me. And that life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith, the faith which is in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So in other words, I must be able to recognize that without God, I cannot make it through my day. And even when I connect with him, there are still going to be some things that are going to happen that is going to kind of push me to that. But I must always remember, as I depend upon him, where I am weak, he is strong. And that's why for me, what I pray every day, and it's the truth, I'm not just saying it because I'm on camera. I pray every day, Lord, give me your strength. I like how Paul says it in 2 Corinthians 12:9. His grace is sufficient for my need. His strength is made perfect in my weakness. And the reality is there are going to be some times where I cannot distance myself from certain types of situation. That's the reality. Like, for example, today I had to deal with a situation. And every time I go to this place, this person just, I don't know, I don't want to say the person doesn't like me, but the way the person behave. So that individual is supposed to be giving service because the individual is working to serve others. All right. And as I went to conduct business, I got, and I just said, Lord, give me the strength. All right. Now, the way the individual was behaving, it could have led me to behave in a certain type of way. And obviously, I would have been right to be here because I am the one who is trying to get service. But at the same time, I asked God to give me the strength, and He did give me the strength. And when I left, I was so amazed at how I was able to control and take charge of that situation. All right. And then I remembered it's not my strength that allowed me to do that, but it's because I may be weak in that area. But Christ promised me where I am weak, He's going to give me strength. So, as I said, you may practice all that we would have spoken about. You may practice distancing yourself. You may practice going to a safe space in your mind. But yet, still, the situation still keeps happening, and the individuals are still throwing bait at you for you to bite back at. But in those moments, I firmly believe that God is able to help you. And so, if you don't have a relationship with Him, reach out to Him, and you would see His strength at work in your experience.
Thank you, Pastor Hines. Psychologist Campbell?
There are those situations where you could try everything you know. I mean, a part of what I do is I teach anger management, I facilitate anger management classes for violent offenders in the prison. Now, you would think that I would master this thing, but there are some circumstances where you try all of the techniques, and there are some people who still come at you. And I've learned a couple of things. One is that very often these people have their own demons that they are fighting. You just happen to be in front of them, and so they've made you the target, but it's not you that they're fighting, it's their own demons. Recognizing that sometimes help you feel some compassion towards them instead of anger. So you're able to replace that emotion with something that is more helpful. The other thing is that when you've tried all you can, and I'm paraphrasing what Pastor said here, when you've tried all you can, you leave those people to Jesus. Let God take care of them. You know, there are some people that you can't help, and nothing you can do will bring any change to how they respond. And we can't change people, and so we just leave them to God, because His Holy Spirit can change anybody. And sometimes He would change those persons. Sometimes He would move them out of your way, and sometimes He would move you out of their way. So, you know, when you can manage it, let God deal with it.
And if I,
as Pastor said, before you try to manage it, you ask God to deal with it. Yeah, sure.
And if I may just share this as well. I quoted an experience in 2 Corinthians 12:9, thereabout. The Bible tells us that Paul was given a thorn in the flesh, and 3 times he pleaded with God to remove that thorn. But God said, I ain't going to remove it. You know, there are some things we plead with God. There are some people we plead with God. God, please remove them from my experience. Maybe it's my supervisor at my job. Maybe it's a colleague. But I'm applying to other jobs and I'm not getting any job. All the applications I sent out, I'm qualified, I'm just not getting it. Maybe that is what God is putting as a thorn in your flesh. All right, now don't go looking for any thorns in your flesh. But maybe that is what God is allowing there to keep you connected to Him, to allow you to know that He is the one that can help you through it. Because we need to remember that this life is not just about living here on earth and that's the end of it. There's heaven that we're preparing for. And God wants to work on us and work on our character, work on our development. And so maybe that's an experience you're going through. That's where you need His strength to help you through it. He might not remove you from the situation. He might not remove the situation from you, but He'll give you the ability to get through it with His power.
Yes. And what I want to know, Elder Campbell, you have been dealing with, you've been teaching anger management classes. You have, well, I will always call you, you were one of the renowned psychologists in Guyana.
Yes.
So people send for you all over to do sessions. So what I want to know is, have you discovered it? In terms of research, or if not research, from your experiences or interaction with individuals, which sex do you think is prone more to anger management currently? We women, we talk, so when we're angry, men may be expressed, but in terms of you direct statistics, have you come across which sex is being affected more by anger issues? All right, so while Pastor, I'm going to throw the same question out to you. But in terms of your ministry right now and interaction with individuals, is there any conclusion of which sex that have been affected more by anger issues?
I mean, the reality is, and I think the choir can sing that it's, for me, and my understanding, most of the times it's men. And again, it boils back down to the fact, at least in my exposure, the fact that men don't take control of their feelings because of what we said earlier. They think it's effeminate if they do that. They'll be effeminate, they'll be woman-like. But men have emotion, and nothing is wrong with being in tune with your emotions. So that's why I'll say it's mainly men that I'll deal with situations like that.
So is it that women don't?
Now, the reality is, I deal with situations with women as well. All right. So women have their situations like that. But again, backtracking to what we spoke of earlier, I think women have their groups where they hash out their stuff and they
Okay.
talk about their situation. So I think women understand that and they create that space, all right, to deal with that. But the reason I'm saying it's more men is because men don't have that. And I'm really thankful within Trinidad, the South Caribbean Conference, the Men's Ministries Department is really pushing the initiative for men to understand that they can really have that safe space and creating that environment where they can talk things through. So at least I know within the conference that initiative is being pushed here in Trinidad. So yeah, I think Ella Campbell got knocked out there a bit, but even dealing with situations. Let me see if I can elaborate on it a little more. Uh, the women that I have spoken to, I have to be very careful because I don't want anyone to think I'm speaking to them, even though I'm innocently saying what I'm saying. All right, even the situations I deal with, I think most of the times women are more understanding. I'm just
Okay.
saying that they're more understanding to recognize that, and they're more willing to deal with these situations. I have a harder time when I relate with the gentlemen. But as I said, what I try to do is create that safe space for them to talk. And there have been breakthrough experiences. I've been counseling individuals, and let me tell you the truth, tears have flowed from their eyes. I've literally seen it, and it just was a Holy Spirit moment in those times.
Okay. Thank you. Ella Campbell? All right. So I really don't know what's happening at that end. All right. So even as we come down, I really want to for the audience. Oh, Dr. Hidar, if you're still viewing, I'm very happy for you to comment in terms of the medical aspect of it. So if you're still on, I'll be very happy for you to join the stream so that you can just comment on the medical aspect of it. All right, over to you, Will Campbell.
All right. My internet is misbehaving so much today. I'm not even sure which question we're on. I'm assuming you asked about the distinction between men and women in terms of their
Yes, that's right.
relative response. I think that, I mean, in my work, I find that there are lots of angry women and lots of angry men. I find that, and I suspect that Pastor must have said this before, that women tend to be more effective in managing their anger and the issues underlying their anger. And men tend to channel primary emotions through anger as a secondary emotion. And men tend to be more aggressive in their response to anger triggers, while women tend to be more passive in their response. So in both cases, sometimes the response is what we would call in psychology maladaptive, is the wrong response. So a passive response where you just, you suck it up and you keep quiet and you keep it in your chest, that's not a healthy response. And in some cases, a woman might withhold speech or do undermining things. So that passive response is not a good response, and the aggressive response is not a good response either. So well, men, because they tend to be more aggressive, then their response is more destructive, more damaging. It causes more problems. Well, at least more overt problems, more open problems. But if I were to say who's angrier generally as a demographic, it would definitely be men.
Okay.
And that's because of how we have been, to use Pastor's word, how we've been cultured to respond to our emotions.
And I would be very happy if I know we're having a lot of. But by the way, on that note, I mean, Pastor Hines, you would have mentioned about men's ministry. They've been doing this stuff. I mean, Elder Campbell, I'm sure you've been doing a lot of session to men. What are their reactions like? I mean, you're doing the sessions and you know that okay, they have anger issues. Are they do they reach to a point whereby they are willing to accept that they have an issue? Because I know many times men tend to hide things within. But when they reach to that point, do they accept that they have an issue and come forward more? Even as we look at the stats that men are mostly affected, what is the break? I know, Pastor, you would have mentioned you had a few men crying, but what is the breakthrough stories, Director Campbell? Do you think that what you guys are doing is very effective in terms of dealing with our men folk as it relates to anger issues?
Oh boy. Let's hope and pray he comes back in.
Yeah.
But while he's out there, let me just say that what I realize is that as I tell persons in counseling, I can only work with what you give to me. As you are willing to share, that's what we can deal with. So I believe, okay, he's back, so let him go, and then I'll add what I'm saying after.
Yeah. Elder Campbell?
All right, I think that men have this thing that they have to deal with called the ego. And I believe that God gave us the ego. I think that sin has distorted what God gave us, which was supposed to be something good. And so for a man to acknowledge that he has a problem with anger, it would mean that he would have to swallow that ego. He has to swallow his pride. He has to acknowledge that there is something that he is dealing with that is outside of his control. And men are more likely to deflect the responsibility for that anger response to someone else, He's a good person, but is she does always get on me case and there's always got behaves. You understand? I hope my Trini friends understand that. So yes, what we tend to do is we excuse away it. we explain it away. We find a way to deflect it so that we don't have to acknowledge that we have what is in fact a weakness. And that comes about as a result of the ego. So I have found that women are more likely to say, well, you know what, I have a problem, please help me. Men have a little more difficulty acknowledging that there's a problem in the first place. And even when they acknowledge the problem, reaching out for help, is not something that men like to do.
And that's why I was going with what I was saying earlier, that I usually share with persons, well said, Elder Campbell. I usually share with persons that I can only deal with what you give unto me. And so I know there are some sessions, let me tell you, or 1.5 into the session is when we get some type of a breakthrough. Because it's beating around the bush, trying not to deal with the situation. And one of the things I do is I try to throw out a lot of questions, trying to figure things or work on that to try to get to know, because sometimes the individual will not see what is happening until you start to investigate some more. And let me tell you something, but when it happens, the breakthrough that you get is so tremendous. But as Elder Campbell said, because we're prideful and we want to protect our ego, we don't want to share that because we don't want persons to think something is wrong with us. And so as a result of that, we carry on that burden far too long.
Thank you. Calling for Dr. Haydar, if you're still there, just please send me a shout out so I'll know. Because I really want to hear Doc's side of it, the medical side of it, in terms of this whole issue. Anyway, we just have 2 questions before we wrap up today's program. And so the one of them I want to know is what would it look like if someone was really good at managing their anger? What would it look like if someone was really good at managing their anger?
Well, Campbell, I
Pastor
usually, I would have wanted to give him a little more time because you know his internet goes on constant. But
All right.
yeah, okay, he's back. Let's see. I don't want to start talking and he comes on.
I told some of my friends in Guyana they need to be the CEO of the of internet over there.
Okay, he's back. He's back.
Elder Campbell. So the question on the table is what would it look like if someone was really good at managing their anger?
Yeah, what did I miss?
So we have this question, what would it look like if someone was really good at managing their anger?
Wow.
Am I? Oof. Okay.
All right. Oh, he's back there.
So I'm switching back and forth between my laptop and my computer. Whichever one will log in first.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, please tell me which question we're on now.
All right, I'm typing it so that we can put it on the the screen. In the meantime, just for a bit of joke and fun, Elder Campbell, you can just read what is on the screen right now. Someone just said this about you.
I'm not gonna let Daniel trigger my anger.
All right. So I'm gonna put the question on the screen at this point in time, and it says, what would it look like if someone was really good at managing their anger?
I think that generally good anger management results in responses to anger triggers that are, one, constructive. In other words, it brings about good resolution. I think anger is important. For example, Pastor mentioned earlier that he gets upset when he sees other people oppressed. We're supposed to get angry when we see that. And out of that anger should come some kind of good, some kind of positive. When we think of people like Martin Luther King, it was anger that caused him to respond. So if it brings about, if a person who manages their anger well brings about a positive response, people who are able to get angry without doing things that are destructive, and at the end of the day, the situation gets fixed, that is good anger management. Another important hallmark of good anger management is being able to be assertive rather than passive or aggressive. So assertiveness fixes the problem without hurting the person I'm angry with, rather than hiding from it. But I don't hurt. Argument is a positive, brings good, and also chooses her battle. If I'm a lion, I have to deal with I'm talking here about problems, not necessarily. I'm talking here about circumstances. I'm a lion, and so mongrel problems will not get my attention. I'm going to deal with lion problems. So I have to decide what problem are worth the effort to fight with. So a person who does not little dog that barks. You're able to ignore because they are not worth. Nothing can come out of engaging that issue. Nothing good can come out of them. So I hope that I've wrapped that up very good enough, well enough. But the three things: you choose your battles well so that you don't engage in things that mean. Listen, there are some times when we feel like we gotta make people respect us. Now, when that person respects you, quote unquote, respects you, what do you get out of that? Does that increase your salary? Does it add a veranda on your house? What do you get out of that? So it's not important to get everybody to respect you. And then you need to choose a response that is not deliberately hurtful or harmful to the other person. You also need to choose a response that is not going to hurt you inside. And you have to ensure that whenever you respond, at the end of the day, good comes out of it.
Valid. Thank you for the submission. So Shanella, welcome to you, and Annabelle, welcome to both of you. Go ahead, Pastor Heinz.
Oh no, it was well said, because the reality is, backtracking on the experience with Christ, when he did what he did, he didn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
It was a constructive type of reaction. And so I do believe that we need to really evaluate things. And if you see, I said it earlier, not every time I am right means I must always take actions with that. For example, I might be in a situation where someone does me wrong and I'm right to respond that way because you did me wrong. But not because I'm right to respond that way means that I should respond that way. Because what about if I respond that way and that causes the situation to escalate? And that is why I think it's so important in terms of managing our anger to, as was highlighted, be proactive instead of reactive. Think about things. Not everything requires a response. As Ella said, choose your battles wisely. Don't waste your energy fighting on battles that you don't have to fight upon. So with God's help, you get to the place, not that you don't get angry, but that you don't allow wrath, destruction to come out of that.
Thank you. Well said, both of you. All right, so even as we wrap up today, I realize my dock is not on. But I just want first of all, let me just appeal to the audience. Don't forget to share this broadcast to your page, share the YouTube link to anybody. I know several persons will just sit and look at the program after, so that other individuals can be blessed. So what I just want for the two of you this afternoon is just your closing thought on this entire anger issue. If there's anything that we have not addressed in the questioning, feel free to give it in your closing submissions. If there's not a question from the audience also, because oftentimes I find every time I'm at the point of wrapping up, you see there's a question came in just now. So every time I'm at the point of wrapping up, then some 4 questions coming in, right? So audience, if at this point in time before the closing remarks, I just want you, if you have your questions, please put your question, whether it's on YouTube, I'm going to see your comments on YouTube. If it's on Facebook here, just leave your question so we can answer it now. Because when I go to the wrapping up scene, mentally my mind shuts down. So I don't want us to be going back and forth. So thank you. So we have the first question here coming in. And this came from and it says, if someone does something to really hurt you and you become angry, you both were counseled, but still one party still need closure. What do you do?
No, the reality is that, as was said earlier, the only person you can change is the person you see in the mirror. The reality is not everybody is going to give in to what should I say? Not everyone is going to accept wrong and try to make right. Not everyone is going to do that. But I like the way that it is said. I think it's in Romans chapter 12, where the apostles said, as far as possible, live peaceably among all men. Yeah. I think that is Romans 12:18. Yeah. As far as possible, live peaceably among all men. You do your best to resolve the situation. it's their choice. If they want to hold on to that poison and kill themselves, then you have no control over that. Pray for them if you see them doing that, but at the same time, you ensure that you have done what you could have done and you move forward. Because if you consistently hold on to that, put yourself in that situation, the only person that would be hurt would be you yourself.
So, Pastor Hines, I just want to dig a little deeper. If that person is my spouse,
well, as I said, pray for that individual. Develop a coping mechanism to deal with it. Now, the reality is, and it's much more difficult, especially when one person is a believer and the other person is not a believer. All right, because one person subscribes to the idea that I am broken, I'm in need of God to help me. The other person thinks, I'm good, deal with me how you see me. You marry me, you deal with it. And that's difficult. And there are many individuals who are miserable because of marriages. I know that exists there. But you do your best. And I've spoken with individuals, and I'm not married, so I cannot say anything in terms of that, but I've spoken with individuals who have been in situations like that. And they develop ways in which to deal with it, cope with it. Now, you should never feel as if you're walking on eggshells. That's another thing, but that's a whole other discussion by itself. But you just do what you can, accept the fact that not everybody would want to be changed, pray for that individual, and just do your best to maintain a sense of peace in the midst of it. God can give us peace. I mean, the reality is He promised you that He'll give you peace as long as you focus on Him. So with His help, you'll be able to maneuver through it. Don't leave the individuals, and well, if it's a hurtful situation where there's abuse and what have you, that's another discussion. I'm not saying to stay in an abusive situation, and I'm not saying to divorce either. But at the same time, with God's help, strength can come. Sometimes it takes a matter of time, but after a while, things can change. And if it doesn't, then maybe that's your thorn in the flesh. Don't go telling your husband he's a thorn, but maybe that's your thorn in the flesh, and you need God's strength to help you through it.
All right, thank you, Pastor Hines. Psychologist Campbell.
Yeah, forgiveness is a major part of the whole anger management process. And forgiveness, I tell people, is a process. So very often you've gone to counseling, people have acknowledged that they are wrong, but there is still something you don't feel like is closed. And sometimes that is because the process, the healing has not yet taken place for you. I liken it to receiving a wound, a deep wound. And then you go to the hospital and you get it cleaned and dressed and medicated and stitched up, but it doesn't heal right away. So sometimes you have to go through that healing process, and that takes time. I also encourage people to pray for the person who has hurt you. At first, because you're hurt, it is hard. It's really hard to pray for somebody who's hurt you. But if you persist in it, after a while, you find it becomes easy. And then you really, in your heart, start to desire their good. And when you get to that place, then you know that you really have forgiven that person and that the hurt has healed. So it is a process, and sometimes you have to be patient. And as Pastor said, understand that you can't change the other person. So what you have to do is to forgive the other person. And that forgiveness process does not happen. Forgiveness is not natural for man. Forgiveness is not natural for humans. I believe with all my heart that forgiveness is of God. And so we have to depend on Him for that. So if you are in a process, if you are in a situation where you feel like it is, you've gone through all of the humanly possible things, but it is still hurting because of this, then you've got to go to God with that now. And you have to pray that He would help you forgive, and pray for good things to happen to that person. Find good things that maybe pray against every bad thing that you want to happen to that person, until after a while you actually begin to feel what you are praying, and you know that the healing has taken place.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Psychologist Campbell. And I noticed Dr. Hidayat just commented, Doc, we're just looking at the medical side of it right now. If for those of you who are paying keen attention, we have the psychological aspect of it, we have the spiritual side of it, and I'll be very happy to hear the medical side of this entire issue of anger management, and perhaps some of the medical issues that comes out as a result of persons who constantly keep getting angry and don't know how to manage it. So if by chance you are able to connect to the stream, please feel free to connect at this point in time just to share your view. And of course, I'll just remove you from the stream after. Um, while Dr. Hidar is contemplating, I just want to ask the audience again, are there any other questions that you would like to see addressed here? Because we will not be moving to anything after the closing remarks here. And just remember, all right, great. So the stream link is there, Doc, and he will join in a minute time. Okay, great, excellent. Thank you very much. And yeah, so just remember to share the link to others. Don't forget to share it on your page also. There is the Issues in Focus page on YouTube. Please don't forget to like the video and to subscribe for a notification when we have programs coming up. I just want to put this in just before the closing remarks, before Doc speaks. On Wednesday, we will have one of our relational segments. Don't forget, don't miss it. And for those of you who would have missed last week, you can go check back on last Friday's episode where we dealt with young women whom, out of wedlock pregnancies, and how they would have dealt with criticism received by, of course, family members, church members. And so you can connect back to that link, and you can share, feel free to share to our young people so that they can be edified at the same time. All right. So Doc, we're just waiting on your comments. So in the meantime, let's just keep the conversation rolling just before you, don't let it be your closing thought. But all right. In terms of, let me just push this question out there. In terms of how many young people have you found, let's say between the ages of teenagers from the secondary school group, Elder Campbell? I don't know how much you would have dealt with them, but do you find that being a prevalent issue there in our secondary schools?
Yes, sadly, too many young people are dealing with anger issues, and sometimes it comes out of abuse, sometimes it comes out of neglect, sometimes it comes out of unresolved trauma. But very often it is because of poor learning. Very often as parents, we don't teach our children how to manage their own anger. In fact, sometimes we maybe unwittingly encourage the angry outbursts. So if, for example, and it starts really early, child throws a tantrum and you give that child a whole lot of attention for that tantrum. Sometimes that tantrum is seeking exactly that, attention. So when you reward it with attention, then the child learns over time that this is what, this thing works. Hey, this thing works. So whenever they want some attention, they throw a tantrum and they get attention. So sometimes we unwittingly feed into this thing, and so children learn incorrect ways of dealing with their anger. Sometimes we don't teach them at all, and sometimes we try to help them deal with their anger by our own angry outbursts. Like I was sitting, permit me, I was sitting on campus one day, and I heard two women talking about their children, and one of them said that her daughter kicked her younger brother, and she knocked this little girl head to every post in the house to teach her that she mustn't hit her younger brother. Now, how effective was that? Now, I found that so appalling that I had to jump into that conversation, because that you are teaching through anger how to not be, how to manage anger, and that did not make any sense at all to me. So I see it a lot in young people, and very often it's because of trauma, but sometimes it is also because of poor parenting.
Wow. All right, so Pastor Hines, you have anything to add to this? And then before, I'm going to take Dr. Hidar's question, and Dr. Ida's comment on the medical side, and then there's another question on the table, and I love that question coming from Dual Use there. So yeah, you guys can pay attention to that question. In the meantime, we take in comments. So Pastor Hines,
Just remind me of the question again, please.
we're dealing with our young people in terms of secondary school. I know you,
Right.
yeah, you deal with a lot of young people in your church setting.
No, as I said, well, as Elder Campbell would have highlighted, it's backtrack to the home. Yes, there are situations that we have to deal with and look upon. And obviously, for young people, most of the times it's a fight that it would lead to. Now, within the church, it is controlled, but obviously there are cliques that would be formed as a result of that, and what have you. But it really traces back to the home environment. The reality is, in psychology, there's a theory. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I know there's a theory in psychology, the nature nurture theory. And so, if you are exposed to environment, that environment affects your behavior. And so many of our children are in home where they see abuse happening and they think it's okay to lash out. It's okay. I mean, even take it into later on into marriage and stuff. It's okay to hit their wife because they see that happening. And I think it really needs to be readjusted from the home. Now, the sad reality is that a lot of our young people are not in Christian homes. All right. And so the question is how that can be helped. I would say from a church perspective, at least what I'm doing within my congregation is I have a forum where we can talk to issues like these. And I think if we could create that, this is another great forum. I commend you for the work that you're doing as well, because information is power. And when we receive information, when we know that there is somebody that can talk, when we share our experiences, we know that we're not in it alone. And because we're not in it alone, we can get help as well to deal with those things. But
Thank
yes, it is present.
Thank you. Dr. Hidar. Have you here, of course.
Hi guys, I am happy to be with you again, Pastor Shibiki. I'm in the great outdoors today, enjoying the fresh air. Pastor Hines and psychologist Campbell, it's nice to join with you guys, and I've been listening for a while, and then I was off, and then I'm on again. I totally agree, and I concur with everything that you guys would have said. Just taking it on the health side, though. What chronic anger does, and as psychologists would have said it, psychologist Will would have said it earlier, chronic anger is very unhealthy for us. When we are angry, what it triggers is our fight and flight hormones to be released, and many times this leads to the release of our stress hormones, which is cortisol, and this leads to oxidative stress in our body, which contribute to a whole lot of diseases and conditions. One of those major ones, and a huge public health issue, not only in Guyana and the Caribbean, but the world as well, is high blood pressure, which is hypertension and diabetes. Oxidative stress is a great contributor to these conditions. We also have things like cancers and heart disease. Patients with these are with an increase in oxidative stress and stress hormones like cortisol, due to which can be possibly attributed to anger, can also suffer strokes and heart attacks and things like that. So it's of utmost importance and it's very imperative that we um, learn from what Pastor Hines and psychologist Campbell would have spoken about, ways you can help to control your anger problems.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Doc. And I don't know, in terms of for the past, well, I mean, I know you're pretty young in the medical field, but do you guys have you been able, while you mentioned all of those different sicknesses, was there any point in time whereby you were able to directly link that to anger directly?
Well, definitely when we're speaking to patients, we try to figure out a cause. If we can't find a medical cause, then we go to social reasons. We always, in a complete history from a patient, we take their social history. So this is where we ask about things like anger and so on, because we believe that these can be causative agents. We always find out. Uh, I'm sure there were cases most often for blood pressures. If you've been to the clinics in your communities, you've been to the hospital, the nurses and the doctors always ask you if you're stressing about something. So it's definitely
Hmm.
something that we
Hmm.
ask, and it's very highly reported that stress, which can come from anger, is one of the causes of these conditions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andre
Not
Yes.
Vidar.
just before I leave, I want to also add that it's not good for our mental health. So anger is not good for our mental health either.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program, Doc.
Cool.
All right. So our closing question that we have here is this came from Duel. Good afternoon. How can you start training persons to manage your anger? As example, I have a 2-year-old. How can I start training her in this regard? And somebody, I think someone of you would have mentioned on the earlier that Elder Campbell in terms of children throwing tantrum and all of those things, and parents just giving them. So how can you start training her in this regard?
Mr. Hughes, power to you. You're dealing with a 2-year-old, someone in what we refer to as the terrible twos. So this is sometimes a difficult process. It could be very frustrating because this is a little child too young to really to fully understand, but old enough to frustrate and stress you out. And it would help when you're dealing with a 2-year-old to first of all understand that this is somebody who is starting to become emotionally awake. And so this person has figured that, you know what, there is this emotion called anger. And let's be real, sometimes anger feels good. Um, and one of the things that there are a couple of things that you can do with a 2-year-old. First of all, do not reward the anger. So when a 2-year-old is kicking up and screaming and so on, you don't want to say, all right, here it is. They might be screaming for something and you give it to them because they scream. So they learn that if I want something, all I got to do is throw myself on the floor and throw a tantrum. So you don't want to reward the anger. I said before, and maybe I might not have completed that thought. It is important for the parent to understand that this is a normal part of the process, not necessarily acceptable, but certainly normal. So that would help relieve some of the stress, so that that my child is not the worst child in the world. My child is just going through a pretty necessary phase. Another thing that you can do is to help, because about this time is where the child is learning words and learning to attach meaning to words. You help
Yeah.
that child learn to identify what they are feeling. So you now speak for the child. Are you're angry? Baby is angry? Let's talk about this. Or some, I don't remember. My children are older now. I don't remember how the exact talk. But it's important to help the child to attach words to what they are feeling. And this is part of so later on they don't inappropriately respond angrily when they're actually feeling something else. So you help them. So that does two things. It teaches them how to identify what they're feeling and to identify their emotions, and it also helps you understand what the child is feeling. Well, more than two things. It helps the child understand what he or she is feeling, and then you help them to you take them to a place where they can get calm, where they can be calm. And
Mm,
finally, I want to say on this, and this is a whole session by itself, but finally, you ignore the outbursts as much as you can. Ignore the outbursts as much as you can, so that the child learns that this outburst is not going to get me what I want. All
mm,
right. So sometimes we're trying to get them to stop, but what the child is getting there is attention, and that's a reward.
huh.
All right. So if you can, as much as you can, ignore it. Now, it's very difficult to do that when you're in a supermarket and all of the other parents and some non-parents are looking at you very judgmentally as if you're the worst parent in the world. All of them went through it and they know what it is. So leave them alone. You know what you are doing and why you are doing it. And so don't let anybody tell you that you got to beat that child and so on, because what you're doing then is teaching the child that the stronger person is allowed to be angrier, so to speak. So this is a whole seminar by itself, but I hope that somewhere out of all that rambling, you've picked out 2 or 3 things that you can do, Mr. Hughes, to help with your 2-year-old. But understand, if you don't leave with anything else here, your 2-year-old is not the worst person in the world. They're going to pass through this phase and they're going to be okay, and so you don't have to panic as a result of this.
Yeah. Well, my friend, oh my goodness, I must commend you. You want to learn so much, and commendations in place when men come forward and they ask these type of questions. Pastor, I don't know if you have anything to
Yes.
add on that. I'm just throwing that on you at you.
Well said. That's what I can say. Well said. Well said. And I think it's better coming from someone who's passed through the experience.
Yeah, I just deliberately asked that question, right? Because I mean, as psychologist Campbell was speaking, I'm like, okay, I was internalizing because for me, I could not have answered that question on my own, how to deal with that. So I'm happy that he would have addressed it. Hi, Marcel, good to see you here. So anyway, as we wrap up this program this afternoon, come to the point now, I'm just going to ask these gentlemen to give us their closing thought on the entire issue of managing the anger within our anger management, as we commonly say, as we wrap up the program today.
All right, because I'm the one with the unreliable internet, I'll take first jump here. I'd like to, Pastor Shabiki, commend you on this initiative that allows us to address issues that a lot of people would probably not have another opportunity to address. This is a really great initiative. God bless you for it, and God prosper you on this ministry. Pastor Hines, I felt comfortable working with you. Maybe one day we'll have offices side by side. Great job. I'd like for us to remember that anger is normal and it's natural, and that it should not be suppressed, but that we can learn to choose positive, constructive, healthy ways of managing that anger. I want us to remember that we cannot respond in our anger and expect a positive response. We have to find a way to slow down that emotion process, that cognitive cycle, so that we stay as long as we can in the thought phase of the cognitive cycle. And let me explain how I understand that biblically. And I'm not a Bible scholar, so I'm open to correction. There's a passage of scripture that when I first saw it, it made it gave me goosebumps, and it does every time. This passage, it says, the wrath of man, and I'm paraphrasing here, cannot fulfill the righteousness of God. In other words, when we act out of our anger, we will invariably do the wrong thing. True. So we have to stay connected with the one who is able to keep us in the thought part of our brain, because our thoughts and our feelings, they tend to, if they're not, the other one is low. So if you're thinking, you don't have, it takes away from the emotion. To help us to stay in the thought phase, a lot of people, and I told you I do anger management in the prison, and I hear every time from violent offenders, if I had known this before, or when I had already committed the act, that's when I started thinking to myself, what have I done? If we could stay in that thought phase long enough, then very likely we would find a different emotional expression, and we would find a different behavior. So we need to plan beforehand how we can deal with angry situations. If you have somebody that always getting on your nerves, and they got a lot of them people, the devil has planned them sometimes right in the pew next to you in church. We can talk about that tonight. You know that you have to deal with that person all the time. You can sit down and find a positive, constructive, healthy way. Here is how I'm going to deal with this the next time this person comes at me like this. And choose a way that is assertive rather than passive or aggressive. Choose a way that can honor God, so that you don't have to ask God for time off so you could answer this person. If you got to ask God for time off, then your response will dishonor him. So think about it beforehand so that you can deal with it when that time comes up. In fact, sometimes you have to rehearse your response in your head. I wish I
Oh,
had
yeah.
time to share with you a particular experience of something that I have to sometimes. There is a particular phrase that I used when I was principal of a school, because parents would come in every once in a while and they're upset with how I dealt with something. And I'm thinking, I'm the professional, I know how to do this. I'm successful at this. You don't come tell me how to do this. And I got anger issues. So I knew that there were parents who were going to come and get me mad. And I had a line that I had a system that I had rehearsed as to how I'm going to deal with that person. And I had a plaster for every sore, if you will. If they do this, this is how I will respond. If they come like this is how I will respond. This is how I will deal with it. And I would constantly go through that in my mind over and over. So when the circumstance did arise, and it did very many times, I was able to manage it in ways. And there was only one time that I can remember that a parent left as angry as he came. But every other time, what happened was we had a parent apologizing, and we were talking about cricket and politics and football before they left. So, if you're able to formulate an anger management plan, if you will, it would help significantly. I hope I didn't talk too much there.
No, you didn't talk too much. We've learned a lot. I love it. Thank you. Pastor
What,
Hines?
all I can say is amen. But it has truly been a pleasure being on this panel discussion. And I join with Ella Campbell in commendations to you, Pastor Shibiki, for the work that you have been doing. I mean, I have been blessed as a result of it, even on this program, and I appreciate the information shared and the professional guidance given from our psychologists as well. If I may just say elaborate on one basic point, we have to understand that we are broken individuals, and that because we are broken individuals, we will experience different challenges. That is the truth. All right. We are not immune to anger. The reality is, as we look at the Bible, even the Bible highlights men who got angry: Cain, Moses, Saul, Jesus himself. But if you take time to appreciate the example and what was shared, you can learn from it. The reality is, sometimes in life, we try to go through this life without taking time to learn from others' experiences. And even as a young child growing up, I always would appreciate. I mean, the reality is, most of the people I relate with in church, even now, as an adult, are the senior members, because I learn from their experiences and the examples. And so the examples given in the Bible are there to help us and to guide us. Cain got angry. He dealt with it the way he dealt with it, killed his brother. Where did he end up? Moses got angry. Thank God he sought God's forgiveness, and he was able to, at least, he didn't see the promised land, but he was able to at least reach a point in his experience with God. Saul got angry. And so the Bible is filled with that. Let's learn from those examples. You will get angry. Yes, that is true. But how you deal with it is important. And you should love yourself enough to want to deal with how you manage your anger. You don't want to sit down behind a prison cell living a life of regret. You don't want to cause hurt to someone you love, only later on to be regretful over your decisions. And so there is help. There is a way of escape. I like how 1 Corinthians 10:13 says it. There had no temptation taken you, such as is not common to man. But God is faithful, that he will not suffer you to be tempted above what you are willing to bear, but will with that temptation make a way of escape.
Yes.
To me, that is telling me that what I'm going through is not unique to me. Sometimes the enemy causes us to think that what we are going through, we are the only ones going through it. And because we are the only one going through that, we cannot get help. And that's why it's important to talk as well. When we understand that others have went through those situations before, that's why there's a list of people in the Bible. When we understand that others have gone through that, but with God's help, they were able to deal with it. And that's why I like that text. But God is faithful. God knows what you could deal with. And he has given you the power with his help to be overcomers. But you need to first recognize that I am a broken individual. Don't sound like I'm preaching, but that I am a broken individual and I need God's help. Philippians 2:13, it is God who works in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Stop trying to change, stop trying to be better, connect to God. Seek professional help where is needed. But with God's help, you can be able to rise above your struggle. And let me tell you something, I like Peter's experience because God is going to bring you, once you trust him and seek him, to the point where you can share your story and help others as a result of it. But you must be willing to seek him and to seek help. Don't give in to the ideas that others would share that you're a sissy if you talk about your situation. I don't know if you use that word in Guyana.
Oh, yeah.
But don't give in to that. Be willing, because the reality is, I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good man. I want to be a good citizen of this country, of wherever I go. I want to be a good representative. And I can only do that as I connect to God. So yeah, it may mean I have to be vulnerable at times with somebody I can trust. But be willing, because you are working on you, and added to that, the generation that comes behind you would be blessed as a result of the initiative that you are taking. With God's help, you can fix whatever problems you're faced with.
Elder Campbell, what a powerful sermonette. All right, good. So, Levan and Alfred, thank you very much, Pastor Hines, for sharing. Levan would have asked here, please share some tips on managing anger. Levan, I would advise you to go back, check this program out. We had tips right through the program here, and we're wrapping up at this point in time. Elder Campbell, just to appease him, maybe you can just share two, Pastor Hines, maybe just share two, just very brief, no explanation. But Levan, I would advise you to go back, listen to this broadcast fully, and you'll be able to get it fully.
Think before you speak, and have a safe space in your mind or somewhere where you can go to when you get angry.
Thank you. Your microphone is muted, Elder Campbell.
I'm going to repeat the think before you speak in different words. Slow down the process. Slow down the process. And for some of us, it's counting or whatever. And the other one is choose your battles. Not everybody that gets you angry, you have to respond to.
That's right. Thank you. So, Levan, I hope that was helpful. But trust me, you will need to look back at this program because we had some helpful tips that were shared throughout. So thank you very much, gentlemen, once again. And Pastor Hines, of course, being the spiritual person on the platform here. By the way, let me make a disclaimer, not like anybody else may not be spiritual, right? But being the pastor on this platform here, everyone compared to me, I'm going to ask you to close us in prayer.
I'm happy that you corrected that. All right. Let us bow our heads, and even for those who are listening, maybe you're struggling with something, just surrender it to God, and He can help you. He can help you through it. Let us pray. Loving Father, we are so thankful, oh God, that you are concerned about every aspect of our life. And Father, for those individuals who have viewed this program, you have created a way to show them that there is another way out. Father, we are thankful, oh God, that as we were reminded, with your help, we can make it through. And Father, you have given us some tips, you have given us some guidance as we seek to deal with and as we seek to manage our anger. Father, I want to thank you for your daughter, Pastor Vifehouse, for her willingness to be used as a vessel. I want to thank you, God, for the initiative that she has, and I pray, God, that you continue to bless our Father and expand her territory. God, I'm praying, oh God, for your son, elder psychologist Will Campbell. I'm thankful, oh God, for the call you have placed upon his life and for his willingness to be used within his community and his country, oh God, to help and to encourage others. Father, I just pray, God, that you will continue, God, to strengthen him, give him the guidance and the wisdom in managing situations he's placed with. God, we are surrendering whatever it is that we are battled with right now. Your children are listening. They are tuned in right now and they are connecting to your God. Father, your word does tell us in Ephesians 3:20 that you are able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. As they allow your power to be at work in their life, oh God, Father, I pray that you will do something great so that, oh God, their test can be turned into a testimony, oh Father, and others can be encouraged as a result of it. Father, help us as we go through this life. We trust you, we depend upon you. Take care of us. Bless your children, oh Father. And in everything, may we always remember is that we are more than conquerors through Jesus Christ. Into your hands we commit our lives. Have your way, O Father. Thank you for the breakthroughs. Thank you for the deliverance. Thank you for the blessings, O Father. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So thank you very much. And hi, Brother Saul, welcome. And I just want to say so long. See you again on Wednesday at 2. For those of you who are joining this program for the very first time, it aired on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 2 p.m. If there be no program on a particular day, you will see an announcement before announced. But feel free to join at any point in time and share so that others can be edified. You can check back. You can like the page Issues in Focus with Shibiki on Facebook, and you can see all the broadcasts that we had there. Or you can go on YouTube and just type in Issues in Focus with Shibiki Vivos again, and you will see several programs that are uploaded there. And thank God that we are viewing live. And if a chance at any point in time you want to make a contribution towards the advancement of this program, feel free to do so. So God bless you all, and I'm going to see you, wonderful audience, again on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Thank you very much again, psychologist Will Campbell and Pastor Ronaldo Hines, for being on the program today. God bless you all.
God bless you too. Take care.
God bless you.